Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode, we're talking about what plot did the very best during our 16-day rainfall season, which coincides with the rut. This plot was 100% unexpected. It's something that I've never seen before. I think this is something that's going to be very beneficial to a lot of deer hunters across the United States. All our plots did pretty good for this year. I can't really complain whatsoever. I think we got a kill off every single plot that we had, maybe one that we did not that I'm thinking of, but very, very high success rate hunting over the food plots during the 16-day gun season. The standing corn did really, really well. Some standing soybeans did well. The brassica plots that were interseeded with the clovers and oats and the winter wheat also did well. We never hunted this alfalfa plot, but I saw a pile of deer in this very regularly. So all the plots did pretty well this year, as opposed to how they did last year, where it was very, very tough. We didn't have the white oak acorns here in Western Kentucky this year that we had last year. On years where the acorns are down, the plot usage is going to go up. On years where the acorns are way up, the plot usage is going to go down. That's just how it works. It's just a cycle that happens here. Is the deer prefer the white oak acorns over any other food source in the deer woods. So if you have them, the plot's going to be used less that year. We didn't, and the plots got used very heavily this year. One plot in particular that was not really set up for hunting did absolutely phenomenal. I have never seen a plot pull as many deer to that area as I did this plot, and I wanted to make this video and share this with you. And as I've thought about this and why this occurred, I started making a lot of sense of it, of why this did so well. And it all kind of boils down to the weather events, the environment that we were hunting in during the 16-day gun season. As most of you we were very dry this fall. We had, for the most part, enough rains all summer long up until the very last month or so, up until maybe August, September, got pretty dry. And then we really didn't get any substantial rainfall up until about a week before the 16-day gun season. Sometime around the 1st of November, the rains kind of showed back up. Also, what happened was we were well above average as far as temperature-wise. And that was something that really was amazing for as hot as it was during the 16-day gun season. That's all we get in Kentucky is a 16-day rifle season. As warm as it was and as crappy as the conditions were, we did very, very well during that season, which is really odd. Usually when, as it was this year, 65, 70 degrees in Western Kentucky during the middle part of November equals terrible hunting. Very slow, a lot of nighttime movement. The rut's typically still going on, but it's typically going on at night. So we're not seeing a lot of that action. This year we did. We still had very, very high success rates over the farms this year, even despite the terrible conditions that we were fighting. Going back to the weather change, we really didn't have a killing freeze the entire month of October. Generally, we'll get a killing freeze sometime in late October. If not late October, the first full 5 days in November are almost guaranteed to get a killing freeze. We didn't get that this year. We got down to maybe 31 or so in mid to late October one night. That was it. Other than that, we had no freezes to speak of. The environment was a little different for whitetails this year, right? So when it starts to get really, really cold, whitetails' diets switch. And they switch to that high carb diet, which is acorns and whole grains, the corns and the soybeans, things like that. They're eating that stuff significantly more than what they're eating protein during that time of year. When it's warm, when it's still 70 degrees outside, they're still eating those acorns, no question about it, but the corn usage is way down because they don't need as much fat at that point. They're still eating more protein. The best plot that I saw this year was my sunflower field. I was kind of mind blown by this, to be honest with you. I planted 3 acres of sunflowers in the spring. We planted it for the dove field, and we had some great hunts on that dove field. But where the dove field is not located around habitat, maybe 300 to 500 yards to the nearest woods, to the nearest habitat section. The rest of it's open fields. When I was seeing these large amounts of deer that were heading to the sunflowers field every night, I'm like, what in the world's going on? Why are they going out there? Obviously, they like the actual sunflower seed, but I can't imagine that that's what they were eating. And it really puzzled me for a lot of rifle season. I was thinking about this, and it just kind of clicked on me. What I think happened was we were so dry all fall long that those sunflower seeds were staying viable on top of the ground. So basically what happens is when that sunflower plant matures, the head falls over and it just periodically starts dropping those sunflowers on the ground. And that just kind of continues for a very long period of time. It doesn't like it just turns over and then drops every one of them. It just kind of drops them very, very slowly over a very long period of time. So my first thought process was they're eating the actual sunflower seeds that are on the ground. But then as I really got to thinking about this and kind of diving into this and looking at past experiences that I've had, I think really what was happening was those whitetails were going to that sunflower field to eat those small sunflower plants. Because like I said, we were dry all summer. We really hadn't had any frost and we hadn't had any significant rains. There was thousands and thousands and thousands of sunflower seeds on top of the ground. Come the first week of November, we start getting pounded with heavy rain, heavy rain, heavy rain, 2 or 3 bands per week that were dropping 1.5 inches or more. So what happened to all those sunflower seeds that are on the ground? We used a pre-emergent herbicide out there, so we still had pretty good seed to soil contact across the entire field. What was likely going on, the sunflowers germed up. They started growing. And when they started growing, those whitetails found those little bitty sunflower plants and absolutely went to town on them. When my clients are in, I'm not deer hunting. I'm out scouting. I'm driving around. I'm picking their deer up. I'm picking them up from hunting in the evenings. So I'm not actually in the woods with them. Every night when I was driving by this field, I mean, this thing was full of deer. I'm talking 30 plus every single night, bucks, does, you name it, they were out there. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. This is so far away from habitat that it was just really mind-boggling to me. Now, it wouldn't surprise me nearly as much if that sunflower field was here. We've got some habitat around for the deer to bed in, and they come out pretty quick. This is a long ways away from any form of habitat that there was, but those deer were seeking those fields out, and they were hitting those small sunflower plants that are extremely high in protein. Sunflowers are very similar to soybeans in that respect, is when they first germ up, deer absolutely pound them. They absolutely love them, and I think that's 100% what was going on in that field, is those deer were going and finding that high protein food source that there was none else around. On another farm we had some soybeans that hadn't been harvested yet. Well, as many of you have heard me talk about in the past, these soybeans split open. When they get rain, they dry, it causes the pod wall to crack, and basically the soybeans fall out on the ground. It's called shatter. And so when these soybeans fall out on the ground, the exact same thing happens. We get lots of rain. All of a sudden, these deer are just absolutely pounding these soybean fields. So what was happening is those plants were germing up, and those deer were finding those high protein food sources in the late fall that they wanted, that they desired, and they were absolutely keying in and hammering on those. It kind of goes back to a couple videos that I did back in the summer talking about these late summer food plots, such as soybeans and lab, and I think we need to throw sunflowers in there as well into that mix. Those are phenomenal plots when all the rest of the high protein food sources have started to dwindle, right? When the ag crops start to go down, they start to turn brown, they're losing their protein, and at that point, there's an awful lot of food out there carb-wise, but there's not a lot of high-protein food sources. You guys down in the South and the Midwest can really key in on, in the early part of that season, is maybe not completely depend on that plot. The soybeans, the lab, and the sunflowers, a frost is going to kill them dead, and then you're not going to have anything to hunt over. So I wouldn't really completely rely on that plot as a standalone, but that might be a very, very good mixture to try in an area or two, where if you do have a late frost or you're just hunting earlier in the season, those are very good areas to key in on some of these big mature whitetails early season. That plot did really, really well up until we got a frost, and then all of a sudden I quit seeing deer on that plot. And I think that's why it really resonated with me. What was going on is those plants were germing up, and those whitetails were just chewing them off right and left. Those whitetails were still seeking those high protein food sources, and that was the only one around to speak of. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash that like and subscribe button.